Thank you for the introduction and welcome back after your lunch break. I hope everybody's hearing our voices coming and is finishing up their food and coming to join this great debate. Again, my name is Tommaso Astazi. I'm the Policy Director at Blockchain for Europe, which is a Brussels-based trade association representing the blockchain industry, dealing with all the regulatory topics from MiCA to the Payment Services Directive, stablecoins, but also, of course, identity, which is a very important, very interesting topic. And today we're going to try to explore what identity means and what does digital identity means, right? So why are we now talking about digital identity in a more obviously digital world? Becomes more and more important. And I think we're going to have an interesting conversation today with my speakers, which I'm going to now welcome on stage. First of all, Ingo Rübe, the founder at KILT. Big round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Ingo. We have Hendrik Ebbers, Director of Open Source at Hashgraph. Big round of applause. Thank you, Hendrik. Welcome. And we have Michal Futselaar, Chief Legal Officer at Liberland. Welcome as well on stage. Please join us. You want to sit here? All right. All right. So we're talking about identity, and I think identity is something that we somehow give for granted in our normal world. Let's say it's something that is actually underpinning everything that we do, everything that we want to access as citizens. We need to somehow have an identity recognized by government, by an institution, and that is something that gives us access to services, to public services, for example. But then that also translates into how we access digital services. We all know that, of course, we need to be identified to access certain services, but now we're going further and further into this digitalization area, and especially we're looking at a decentralized internet. What does that mean then when we want to have identity in a decentralized space? Well, we're going to try to find out today, and maybe I'll start by letting our speakers actually introduce themselves properly, pronouncing their names better than I did, but also really explaining what they're building, what they're working on, and how they're looking at identity in this. Maybe we start with Ingo. We go on this side because I think it will be interesting to finish with Michal. So Ingo, why don't you introduce yourself and tell our audience what you're building?
Yeah, so we're quite old in the identity space. So we started eight years ago, absolutely crazy, becoming part of the Decentralized Identity Foundation because we were very much interested in how this is evolving, this identity topic. We were also very much involved in the Web3 theme at this time. Web3 changed a little bit. In 2018, it was more of liberating the people from government influence and from influence of big companies and rethinking or repairing what is wrong in the internet. And one of the things that is wrong in the internet is definitely identity. And we said we're going to concentrate on this topic because it's a big one. It's basically needed by everyone. And we founded KILT Protocol, which has probably a pretty scientific approach. So we worked with the Decentralized Identity Foundation on the standardization of a global standard on how digital identity should actually look like. And we always tried to be, and I think we are, the reference implementation of what comes out of this research. And we built this on a blockchain, so we built our own blockchain with it, which is part of the Polkadot ecosystem, but it's its own blockchain. And recently moved, by the way, to Base, or half moved to Base. So we basically are an implementation of what the researchers say that digital identity should look like.
All right, thank you, Ingo. And Hendrik?
Okay, hey, I'm Hendrik from Hedera/Hashgraph. I'm the Director of Open Source for all the source code that is running the Hedera network and other networks next to it too, because, yeah, more or less a year ago, we donated, or Hedera donated the full source code to the Linux Foundation, which makes the development of it now vendor neutral. And I'm leading, or I'm part of the technical advisory committee of the Linux Foundation, reviewing all the decentralized trust projects within the Linux Foundation containing Bisu, Identus, Hyro, and so on. And when it comes to digital identity, first of all, we have within the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust several projects that are working on or with digital identities, like the Identus project as an example. And next to this, I work together with some people who created the DID specification in the WW3C, like Drummond, if you know him. And I was with him, for example, last month in Geneva, where there was a forum from the United Nations and the European Union about how digital identities, especially in the EU, can be created in a transparent, sustainable, and open but secure way. And yeah, I assume that is why I'm sitting here. Okay.
Great, thank you. And maybe we can, obviously delve into that a bit more, but now let's hear from Michal, because I think he has a pretty different story and, different from all of the projects that you might have heard so far in this couple of days of debate. So, Michal, why don't you tell our audience?
Thank you. So, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. So, we're building a country, a real-life country between Serbia and Croatia on a piece of land which was abandoned by Serbia and Croatia. Of course, there is more to that story. Of course, it is not easy. But we have been here for 10 years. The project began in 2015 by occupying the land, so to say, by taking original possession of it, because it had been abandoned. There is nobody to purchase that land from. All you can do is either leave it fallow or what we did. And we have on top of that a blockchain, Liberland blockchain, which is EVM compatible, or is very soon going to be, but like the code's already there. And we have a need, because states are currently the ones who are determining your base identity as both either a person or as a company. And that's sort of custodial, I would say. It's not completely custodial like that you give them their funds, but you give them your trust, and then if something happens, then it's up to the state to deal with it. So, for example, if a bank uses, like a subsidiary, uses the trust of the state to determine who you are, and then somebody steals your identity, you have to go to the state to get it back. So it's kind of like a guarantor of last resort also, or first resort, actually. So what we are trying to do is to base everything on the blockchain. Currently, we use a very simple and very straightforward solution, where it's a part of the blockchain which determines your identity, the properties of that identity. But we have on our roadmap that we will either incorporate a KILT-like solution or we will build it.
All right, so we already have some cross-proliferation of projects here on stage, which is great. Well, I think it could be interesting to start again from you, actually, Michal, because we're talking about identity, and you have a very clear example, and you mentioned yourself, identity was something that was in the remit of states, of the nation states. It still is, right? As citizens, we have to rely on those public authorities, those sources of trust. And I think this is the big shift that you are working on, but I think which is also what is shared across this panel, is how do we then create this new form of trusted authorities that can give us these verified credentials, and in the end give us this identity that we can use to access services. So how are you approaching that, and what do you think are the main difference from, let's say, the current situation and what you're trying to build in Liberland?
So basically, I'm just going to speak about the very basic things because we don't have research going on into what is optimal in the little nitty-gritty details. But the basic point is that if you have peer-reviewed, if a lot of entities which themselves have identity confirm your identity, the likelihood that it is wrong is going down if those entities don't know each other, right? This is kind of a Byzantine general problem, but for identities. So on a blockchain, and in Liberland, therefore, we have to go that way. We have to ensure that a mass of people without dissenting voices or without significant dissenting voices confirm that you are who you are. For example, that you graduated a university. For example, that you have a bank card. For example, that this is your name. There is space for the state to start it with as the very basic identities, say the name and birth date or something like that. But even that can be confirmed and maybe will need confirmations from some authorized users who will get something for it, and from the cloud of users who just confirm it as they go, and it costs them nothing. And they may get some perks, little perks for it. This is the very basics. I'm sure you all are familiar with, my colleagues definitely, this type of principle. And we want to make it real. Now, honestly, we have had other priorities, such as making our blockchain EVM compatible, but this is going to happen in one way or another in the coming year or two.
All right, thank you. And I think we're already picking up on some very interesting principles, right? We're talking about decentralizing, in the end, this source of trust and this source of authority that actually can tell us, confirm who we are and what our credentials are, right? Because we talked about licenses, university degrees, passports. This is actually something I can tell you is also on the mind of policymakers in Brussels, right? And this is something that, unfortunately, we can't hear today from one of the speakers that was supposed to be with us from the European Commission working on the EBSI infrastructure, so the European Blockchain Services infrastructure, which is looking at cross-border projects for digital identity, for verified credentials, so that we can really have this integrated blockchain space where citizens can just go from one country to another and have their credentials verified and can use those verified credentials to access different services. So it's very interesting that you're also approaching identity, basically the trust element in a decentralized way. And I'm maybe curious to hear how the other speakers, how the other projects are looking at that, and like the decentralization of identity. Is this something that is also a core principle into your work?
I go first if it's fine for you. So, I would say absolutely yes. So, especially, so I would like to have something like that is just a standard for the world. I think we don't go there, but I wish to have it at least in Europe, right? And in Europe, and I assume most people don't know it, so there's a law, I think it's a law by the European Union, I don't know if it's exactly a law or whatever, but it's a must that each country in Europe, until end of next year, have at least an iOS and an Android-based wallet. So Germany, Netherlands, whatever, Spain, Denmark, all of them need to have a ready-to-use wallet implemented in, what is it, 16 months, something, yep. Right? And the idea is that those wallets are all like interoperable. So there is a common standard of it. And I'm a little bit afraid that based on the time that we have, which is not that much time, right, this can go in a direction where we're using the decentralized approach, where from my point of view, the best use case would be, oh, let's create a decentralized network where like each country of the European Union has one node, and that is used to store the identities of the people in the European Union. The worst case is, I don't know, in a cellar in Bergen, there's a database that stores identities, right? And at the Linux Foundation, we're currently trying to create standards that two providers like you or others, together with standards coming from things like W3C, like the DIT standards and so on, can be used to create vendor-neutral products and networks based on it, so that, which would be another problem from my point of view, it's not Facebook or Google who is, like managing the digital identities of a country, right? So that is where I'm currently working on, to make this transparent and open and vendor neutral, so that we can just do it right.
All right. Yeah, Ingo, you want to?
Yeah, so first I want to applaud. Very good that you do that.
We need more of that.
So we heard DIDs now, and we heard verifiable credentials twice. Maybe I just explain a little bit, because not everyone is in the identity space, and I will try to explain a little bit what this is, because it's actually it's quite interesting and not even complicated. So when you think of identity, ask yourself what your identity is, and when you ask yourself that a little bit, you will probably not end up with your passport. That is not your identity. It is, or your ID card. Your ID card is an identification card, but not your identity. There's lots of things which belong to your identity, and it starts with unique identifiers. So what makes you unique? That's probably your DNA, it may be your fingerprint, it may be your iris, something like that. So there is something that makes you unique. And this is very physical, right? It's physical properties of you. And the first task, if we talk about digital identity, is that we have to solve that problem. How do we identify people and hopefully give them the control over this? Because I control my voice, my iris, my fingerprint. If I touch something, I leave my fingerprint. If I don't touch something, if I choose not to touch it, I don't leave it there. So my signature is another thing which is very unique to me. If I can decide if I sign or not. So identifiers must be, in all digital world, must be something that is 100% controlled by the user, by the person, and not by a government, not by a company. And this is where the whole thing starts with decentralized identity. And this is what we're all working on. We try to find ways to not have the country of Germany giving me my identifier. That's not right. I should give myself the identifier. This is why I need a wallet, because in the wallet, I can create my own identifier. I can make like a crypto address, right? I do that in the wallet alone without Mr. MetaMask giving me the these things. So this is why the wallets are so important, because I need something where I can create my identifier myself. And this is what we call a DID, a decentralized identifier. It's not a decentralized identity, it's an identifier. And when you have the identifier, then you can start grouping credentials around that. So that can be the country, for example, issuing me a credential saying this guy's German. This is what the ID card is. This is basically the only thing that it is. And it has to be connected somehow with my identifier. In the ID card, there's a picture of my face on it, there's maybe a fingerprint, there's some things which actually make it very close to my person. So we have to find ways to link the credentials, which can be from the government, but which can also be from a university. They can be from an employer saying, this guy actually knows something about identity or so. So there's different, it could be your fishing license, whatever. All these things then should be connected to your identifier, and they should also be under your control. That means that they should not sit in the Facebook repository, and Facebook tells you that I have a fishing license. Maybe I don't want you to know that I have a fishing license. So there should be a mechanism where I say I want to talk to you, Guy, because you are controlling this pond there, and I want to show you my fishing license, and then you can have this piece of data, but you can have it in a way that you can't reuse it. You can't take my fishing license and show it to you and say, now I can fish in your pond. So these are the problems that we're dealing with. And this is a lot of technologically very, very interesting stuff, and this is what digital identity is about, and this is what all the research and all the implementation that we all do over the last 8 years is actually about.
I like the point with the fishing license. I will copy that when I explain it. That is really, really nice and well explained. And actually, I would totally agree on what we said. I would like to add one thing, and sorry for throwing another buzzword in the room, which is about zero-knowledge proofs that comes on top of that, because next to we have the fishing license, when I today go into a hotel, I need to give them my passport, they do a copy of it, so they have my address, they have my birth date, they have my nationality, they have a picture of me, they have my passport number, they have my whatever, right? What they maybe need is maybe my address, or maybe just my name, and and the verification that is really me, right? And what this zero knowledge proof does based on wallets and cryptographic algorithm where I have absolutely no idea of, is that it allows you to make that proof, like to give somebody the proof that you are over 18, that you are a German person, that you're, I don't know, female or whatever, without giving out any other information. So it even allows you to prove that you are over 18 without giving out your birth date. And that is another important thing of security that comes on top of that technology.
And I think, yeah, we've been mentioning a couple of super interesting elements here, right? We talked about the security, we talked about ownership of identity, and these are really the principles that are underpinning all of these discussions. And you mentioned also the European digital wallet, so this new regulation which indeed will require member states to produce a digital wallet for their citizens. Now, the question that we have been discussing in Brussels, and it's still a bit of an open question, is how will these wallets be truly interoperable with each other? Will they be using public blockchains, or will they be using other type of technologies which are not DLT based? There is still a few questions on that, but I think we all understand that the only way for this to actually make a big change in people's lives is when you have your own digital wallet provided by the Italian government in my case, and I go and I live in another country and I really just use that digital wallet based on zero knowledge proof technology so that I can prove that, again, I'm 18, so I might access this, 18 years old plus service, or that I'm Italian, so I'm an Italian citizen, I have European citizenship. All of these elements that are relevant in the moment in which someone is asking you that question. Again, not just to have that information stored forever, because otherwise we create these security risks and this honeypot for hackers as well, that they can just enter and steal identities or steal information. And so now I'm curious, how are you approaching that in Liberland? How which one of these principles are really important to you? How are you building, or are you thinking to build the future digital identities for the citizens of Liberland? Will that be based on zero knowledge proof? Will that be based on this type of technology? Or what are the main considerations that you're having in that regards?
So currently we have a very simple system where we have verifiers. Can you hear me? Yeah. Currently we have a very simple system where we have a number of verifiers who verify your identity, and then it's verified, and then we trust that it will provide sufficient certainty that it's you. This is connected to normal country system where we actually piggyback on them. They do the research into whether you is you, and we will just trust them. This is not optimal for the long run. It is optimal now because we are not yet big enough. We are not yet complex enough. We do not have all those issues which European Union has. When we are approaching that, or even before that, because we want to plan ahead and don't want to just be reactive, we will obviously have to build something that is a little more robust than this. So add the decentralized element into it. That's step one. Zero knowledge proof is interesting. We will have to research how to do that without getting suspicious of hiding other things like transactions or identities or identity elements, because that is not a thing in blockchain of future. And blockchain of future, especially in Europe, is going to follow the travel rule and is going to tell you who you are and tell you with whom you're dealing, which also has the advantage that you will be very much less likely to be scammed. And if you do get scammed, you will be very much more likely to get something from the scammer. Whereas now that is more a utopia. And of course, Liberland is all about transparency, so we do not mind that. Currently, you can reveal your basic identity, or you do not need to. For instance, I do not. It is voluntary in the system. Of course, everybody knows who I am, but in the system, you would not see trivially who I am. So we allow pseudonymity if you choose for it. Okay. We will see if we will allow that in the future, right? Because probably at a certain point we cannot, because we will have to be compatible with the land and the world around us. And the world around us is just into transparency way more than pseudonymity would allow. But the zero knowledge proof, as you are describing it, that's not about hiding with whom you're transacting. That's just hiding or like making it impossible for the fisherman to take my fishing license and go fish somewhere else. No problem with that. It's just that the implementation of this, to make it unique to those good faith applications and impossible to abuse when you are running a fully public blockchain. Oh, by the way, I just forgot to say, it's a country blockchain, but it's fully public. We have a public blockchain. We don't have a, it's not a, sandbox of corporate proprietary solutions. It's all open source and everything. So obviously, once we implement that zero knowledge proof, others will be able to re-implement it into their own things. And we do not necessarily have the ability to regulate it. So I believe that this will come later and we will use other technologies. We will, for example, try to hash the identities and then you will present the hash. And we will, again, iterate on how complex our situation is. We are almost a startup right now. When we are on a medium enterprise level, we will go for this type of medium enterprise complexity. And if we should ever get to the situation where we are comparable in size and scope and complexity to countries like Germany, then that would be the zero knowledge proof. And then we would have enough resources to make sure that we have some kind of a special zero knowledge proof. I don't know how it works, you know it better, that will not enable builders to simply take it and simply use it into put it into an abusive app and tell that, oh, it was Liberland which allowed it, oh, it was Liberland which actually prompted us to do this. We're innocent. Yeah, we don't want that.
Makes sense. And I think, we were mentioning also now maybe another angle of this whole debate, because we talked about identity mainly focused on citizens' identity, right, on users and how they can access services. But I think maybe Ingo and Hendrik can also maybe mention how does this concept of identity also is dealt with enterprises, because that is also a very relevant element. We say that identity is not just the individual, is also the company, for example. Are there differences there when talking about digital identity for enterprises? What are the focuses there? What are the the worries, the main things that they take in consideration in that space?
Thanks for the question. It's actually much more complicated because it's not only, so you know the KYC, that's for a person, you know KYB, that's for a company. That's not too far off, actually. The thing is that there's also software. Software needs to be identifiable. Then we probably heard a lot about AI in the last couple of days. So agents, they need to be identifiable. Robots need to be identifiable because actually we demand the right to be represented by a robot at any time. So then this robot basically also needs to have a credential that that says, okay, I'm acting on behalf of Ingo, and you can identify me here. With agents, it's probably the most important stuff for the future, because what we see is that AI agents become more and more powerful. People are giving their private keys to AI agents and sending them around the world, making crypto deals for them. That can be quite dangerous because you don't know who this agent talks to, because it can talk basically to any other agent with MCP. Maybe he shares the data with somebody else or misuses the data. And then who's responsible for that? Who takes the responsibility for, I don't know, I put half a Bitcoin in, now it's gone, so who can I ask? Probably maybe the developers. That's always the European answer, but that's not a good answer. So it should actually be someone who sold me this agent who takes responsibility for that. There's a lot of research going out in this direction. I always recommend to read, I recommended that yesterday already, so if you're interested in that topic, read ERC 8004. That's probably the best approach that we currently have of that. That has been already adopted by Google, which is like, okay, this is going to be really important because they also see the same problem. So we need to identify agents. We cannot start thinking in the so you see some problems, some projects problems out there. I'm not naming anyone, which go a lot in the direction of POP, proof of personhood. You have those guys who always look at your iris and stuff like that. Very interesting approach, but this is not an approach to identity, I would say, because it leaves out the companies, it leaves out the software, it leaves out the agents, it leaves out basically everything that we're working on. So how can that be useful? So I would not say that proof of personhood doesn't make any sense, to be honest, because even if you say, yeah, but I want to, if I read something in the internet, I want that this person takes the responsibility for it. So I need a proof of personhood for that. No, you don't, because this person probably used an AI agent to write this stuff, and if there's wrong information in there, that might come from the AI, and then it's interesting who the AI actually was. So it doesn't stop there. So it is much bigger than enterprise, actually, but it is also enterprise.
Okay, well, thank you. There is extra layers that we probably should have considered there. It's quite interesting when you think about how many identities and or things we need to identify in the digital world, right? So there's a lot of work in that sense to do. Hendrik, you wanted to share some more thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree on most points, especially the agents one. So because that is really a big problem. I'm coming from another scenario to it than you mentioned. So we did, so from Hedera, we did a POC together with the Linux Foundation on how to identify who's working on open source projects. So there's a list that was created by like Microsoft, Google, and some other big players about those are the most critical 100 open source projects of the world that are used like in, in everywhere in the world, in all critical infrastructure and so on. And a lot of those components are part of the Linux Foundation. And what they did in the past, they really did these meetings where people exchanged their identifiers in real persons to see, is that a real person who's contributing to this project? And we created a proof of concept together with the Linux Foundation, how that could be with wallets, so that when people meet each other, they can use, and that is where I disagree with you, use this proof of personhood proof to see, yes, that is a real person. So if that GitHub ID, so that person is committing to a project, I can see, oh, several people out of this project have already met him. I agree, he can have used an AI agent to create that code, but it's not that it's a fake account coming from an AI agent, because that is the reality. We see so many attacks coming from, fake accounts with AI agents who's currently trying to get code submitted into this critical software component. So there was like 2 years ago an exploit where one of the core components of Linux was attacked. The code was already committed into it that would have allowed whoever has done that to access every Linux server on the world that is online once it's out there. Somebody from Microsoft happily found it. It was not even in German news. It was, you read it in the tech news and things like that. A lot of people, miss that those things happen. And here it's really important to have this proof of personhood to know that is the real person that is working on the project. Yeah, maybe he used AI, but he not used AI in a way to harm that project, but to help it. And so I think it's some of the middle and depends on the use case, But even on that case, I would like to give DIT to AIs and address them, right? So
in the end, we're not even contradicting.
Yeah, I agree.
Should put this on silent.
Had to happen.
The thing is that this personhood thing is just another credential, right? So, the AI agent and the person, they both need something like an identifier, and then they get different credentials, right? The AI should never have a proof of personhood credential, hopefully, but the person should have one. And then you can still separate the two groups. But if you start building your whole identity system around persons, then you are on the wrong way, because you have to include first to be able to exclude later.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to add one last comment, Michal.
Yeah, so basically I do disagree. I think we need to build our systems based on personhood, and this is absolutely crucial. AI agents is something that you wear. So to like say that the identity elements are kind of equal to each other is to say that you are equal to your code. I think how we will build it is that we will have some kind of a proof of personhood at the core, and all the AI agents and all that fluff will be attributable to a given person. In an ideal world in which we are not living, unfortunately, companies should be the same thing. Like everything should be also attributable to people. And we have that in a way because we have a concept of ultimate beneficiary owners, right? And we're trying to do something like that. So I'm sorry to disagree with the expert here, but it is really important for accountability. That's the word, accountability. People are accountable. Entities too, but at the end of the day, it's people who pay the bills. It's not just the owners, it's also the consumers for companies, whatever, but it's the people. And here it is the owners, right? Shareholders, whatever, active people, directors who do something wrong, like you know this. And the AI agent is not going to go to jail and is going to pay the fine. He's not going to make the victim whole.
Actually, I don't think that we disagree. I agree with what you said. It's more than, yeah, but the agent and other things, softwares, need an identity too. So that you can, that is the point. And I agree, that's why at the beginning I said I disagree on that, because I agree on personhood is super important, right? But we should not miss out that there is, especially in future, I assume, more than just persons who interact with things.
Yeah,
that is just what I'm saying.
That's good. Yeah, I understand that. You need to know who the hacker is, and you need to know that like 666 hack bot is actually his agent and not the other person's, which he will try to vehemently disprove. But yeah,
I would also very much disagree on your statement that the agent is not going to pay the fine. Well, you think that he's not going to pay the fine, but maybe he does. Because when we move into an agentic future, which we are currently doing very much and doing very fast, to be honest, then and we already have agents who can hold money. We have blockchains. Blockchains are pretty good for storing money. So what we can do is, for example, have, and then you can read this in the RFC 8004, you can, which is by the way adopted by companies like Google. So you can build mechanisms where the producer of an agent puts money into a fund which is locked on a blockchain, which for every single agent that he sells, and this is then accumulated there, and in the case that the agent misbehaves, this fund is used to reimburse the people who have the damage. And this is exactly what accountability is. So the accountability problem of agents is something that is currently very, very much addressed and discussed. And if you start a whole country on saying, like the old countries, I mean, when you started a country 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago, of course it was built around persons. The idea of the limited company is only 150 years old. But now we are on the edge of another dimension. And the other dimension is that there's not only limited companies and person, we have DAOs now, we have agents acting, and they're acting with money. That's the first thing that they do. So the DeFi world is the biggest user of the agentic AI currently. So it is really, really important that you don't go into this direction that you say you group everything around persons. The ultimate beneficial owner can be a DAO. It can be whatever is on a blockchain. It's not only a person.
I really hate to cut down a debate, which is an actual debate, and thank you actually to all my speakers for making it such a lively debate. And as you can see, there is still a lot to do, at least still a lot to research. There are a lot of great ideas, but we still have to understand how will these all piece together in the digital future, right? But I think what I hope we understood today is that identity is definitely going to be one of the building blocks of the digital future. So maybe I just want to invite you all to thank all the speakers. Big round of applause for our panelists. Thanks a lot for the debate. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks again for having us. Thank you.